Okay, so maybe 3 years ago, I was at a cafe and I wanted to co-work. So I wanted to spend time there. So I needed to buy something, right? And I can't have caffeine. My body does not like it. And so I ordered a golden latte. They had like a ginger lavender latte and they had all these other like fancy lemongrass sounding things. But then they had one that was called golden milk latte. And it sounded really fancy. So I ordered it and it was delicious. And it didn't make my stomach hurt afterwards. And I had energy and it felt really nice. And it was really like warm on my tongue. And so that kind of became my standard order, but it wasn't everywhere because this was like 3 years ago, right? Well, now I see it everywhere. And I think it has turmeric in it. And I've been working with you and some of your peers on Ayurveda stuff, and turmeric is everywhere. And so now I'm really curious, is this golden milk latte that's like my special time treat, is it healthy?
Very good question.
Just because it has turmeric.
Yes. So I've been hearing about golden milk everywhere. Like everywhere I look, it's like I go into a coffee shop and there's golden milk. I go in and turmeric milk. And I'm like, I wonder if anybody actually knows that that's an Ayurvedic remedy.
Oh.
So it really is. So basically, it's given medicinally for certain ailments in the body. And it is a kind of medicine, so you have to be conscientious about how much and how often you drink. But it is a
Mm.
great alternative to your coffee, tendencies. If somebody has a tendency for coffee and they're trying to move off of it, it is a great remedy. So I'd love to tell you a little bit more about it.
Yeah,
Um,
when should I take it?
yeah. So basically, as is everything with Ayurveda, if people don't know what that word means, I use Veda. So the science of life, it's a traditional science from India that really sees the body as a complete system. And it has a lens of seeing foods as medicine. So everything we're taking in has a set of properties, is interacting with properties inside of our bodies.
I love
So
that.
yeah, and so turmeric is really, it's a root, and it's seen as this sort of amazing root with all of these amazing properties. Some of them have to do with the purification of skin. So the idea is that the whatever you're taking the herb with becomes the vehicle. So whether it's milk, let's say I put turmeric in warm water, I put turmeric in ghee, I put turmeric in milk, the liquid or the substance that the herb or spice is in becomes the vehicle, the deliverer of that spice to your body. So the turmeric milk, the milk is delivering the turmeric to the body. And it is a beautiful balance because something like turmeric is a root and it has a tendency to be a bit more warming, slightly warming, whereas milk is a bit more cooling. So it's a nice synergy of opposite qualities that if you had turmeric in something that was really heating, like a ginger juice, right? You can imagine if you had turmeric and ginger juice, how spicy that would be. You probably start sweating. But when you couple something like turmeric with milk, it kind of creates this beautiful, more neutral, less heating or cooling set of qualities. Um,
So
yeah,
I have a question.
yeah, of course.
So kombucha has become super trendy. And
Right.
I have people in my world that buy like a bottle a day and they drink it like instead of soda or tea in the morning. And I was recently informed by a friend who's been into Ayurveda that that is very bad, that you should have like a tiny little bit of kombucha and only if you have a very specific ailment in your gut. And so people who are guzzling kombucha are, it's like a medicine, it's like food is medicine, but they're not necessarily in need of it. So it can really mess things up. So my
Right.
question is that true? And if so, is that also true of turmeric milk?
Yes.
To both?
More is not better.
Yeah.
We think that turmeric milk, it's good for me. More is better. I'm going to have it every day. So where I was going to head with that is that really it's about the amount of turmeric that they're putting in the milk. First of all, turmeric itself, the raw turmeric root has more water element because it hasn't been dried. So there'd be tendencies for it to be a bit more watery. Dry powdered turmeric would be more drying on the system. So all of the things that we're taking in all of the time are interacting with all of the qualities in us. So, and it really comes down to this concept of it depends. So what your body needs and what my body needs may be very different. So turmeric milk for you every day might be quite beneficial. For me, every other day, every third day might be a little bit better, because what I need for my system may vary from what you may need for your system. So, so answering your question in terms of kombucha and then turmeric milk, some people would take turmeric milk, and if they took too much, it could aggravate, it could call what we call raktadushya, impure blood. Its job is to clean blood, but if you already have a lot of heat in your blood and you take something that has turmeric that's very heating, it could increase the heat and not be a benefit for you. So it is a kind of medicine, but you know, usually the amount, hopefully, this is my hope with a lot of the people who are making the turmeric milk these days, is the amount you're getting is, if it's in a small enough amount and it's what we would consider what you would take in as a food, I'm not worried about it on an everyday basis. If you started to now put 2-3 tablespoons, so I'm thinking like a teaspoon a day, a half teaspoon, an eighth of a teaspoon of turmeric, I'm not as worried. When we start to increase the amounts of turmeric, even as a capsule, I know a lot of people who are like, oh, turmeric is good for me, and they're just popping capsules of turmeric, and I'm like, whoa, it's very heating, it's very drying, it's very scraping. There's a word called lichen, it scrapes. So let's say you've already been scraped out, you're already depleted, you know, you have no,
Yeah.
you know, you're, you know, maybe thin, too thin, and there's like a depletion in the body, and now you're just taking tons of turmeric. It could be overly sort of scraping or cleansing. So if you're taking it in a small amount, so again, like less than a teaspoon a day in a turmeric, I mean, even a teaspoon is quite a lot of dry turmeric, but an eighth, a fourth, a half a teaspoon in a turmeric milk, and it's seen, then your body also perceives it like food, so it's not as detrimental. But if you start to increase those amounts and you're doing it I'm going to have 2 to 3 turmeric milks a day, that's when it could become excessive.
Because that's totally what happens in the US. Like we have
Yeah.
something that tastes good and we're like, I'll have another, please. But
Yes.
if we think of food as medicine, we don't want to like overdose on a good thing.
Exactly. And that's a huge piece of what Ayurveda is teaching about, is like, one of my first teachers was all about little, little. So she's from Nepal, and she would say little, little, slowly introduce things, even with the turmeric milk. Try it, see how you feel. Are there any adverse reactions? For you, I think you had spoken to me about it making you feel better, making your stomach settled. Fabulous. There's a benefit. You don't have any, you're not, if there's no heat that's rising in the body, or you don't feel angry afterwards, this is probably a positive thing for you. But if there's adverse side effects, then your body may be telling you, no, that's not good for me, I don't like it. So we tend to be like, more is better, but more is not always better.
Well, I think you're pointing to something really interesting though, because in order for me to know the effect it has on me, I have to first order it and then check in and be like, how do I feel right now? How
Yes.
are my emotions? How am I hot? Am I cold? Like I have to get present to what I feel like,
Yes.
consume the food as medicine, and then check in with my body again and see how I feel. And
Yes.
I don't know that most people, myself included, are always that present when they're consuming something.
Yeah.
And I think that's also kind of part of Ayurveda too, right? Is being really present when you consume
Yes.
food.
So, I mean, so I tend to be very, just in my personal experience, very aware how foods affect me. But that's just me, because we're all individuals and we're all having different experiences. But a lot of times the first step with Ayurveda is just an awareness of what we're eating. Because sometimes we're not even, we sit down and we're not taught, like nobody said, like, did you have some heating foods? Did you have some cooling foods? What were the properties of the foods in the meal
No.
you're just surviving. You're like, I'm starving and I'm going to stuff some food in my mouth and I'm going to just move on with my day because I need to function and I need my brain to work.
Well,
But
I was raised with the pyramid, right? You need a protein, you need a
right,
vegetable, you need a starch, and that's
right,
a balanced meal. There's
right.
nothing about hot or cold or anything in any of that.
No, and they're not saying, so when you eat that, now how do you feel? What's the experience
No.
you have? Yeah. So the number one with like when I teach my courses, sometimes it's just becoming aware. It's
Mm.
literally like, how did I feel? And some people, they're like, I don't know. And they may not know. Some people, when they start to bring your attention somewhere, then there's an awareness that starts to come. Like, oh, I had that latte. I noticed my stomach was more settled after I had it. Instead of when I drink the coffee, and it might be a comparison, like I had a coffee one day, I had the turmeric milk. The coffee day, I felt myself a little more jittery, and I was talking really fast, and everyone was like, slow down, I need to tell you what's going on. And I'm like, I had to peel myself off the wall. I had the turmeric, I talked a little slower, I was a little more articulate, whatever, so it might just be some awareness, and it may be very subtle what that awareness is. Sometimes it's just that first awareness. But if we're not even sure what the experience is of that turmeric milk, then you start little. You start with a small amount. You get your body acclimated. Everything you're bringing into your body is something new, and your body's going, oh, what is this? What is this food you're bringing into me? So there's always going to be, it's always nice to slowly integrate new things into your diet. Even with the kombucha craze right now, the amount that we need medicinally is so small, and the amount that we're taking in, I mean, I see people go and they buy like 6 kombuchas all at once, and I'm like, because it's extremely kashaya, extremely astringent and drying kombucha. So somebody already has dry qualities like constipation, anxiety. Now they're drinking kombucha, they have more anxiety, more constipation. Not so good. So so what happens with the turmeric is the properties of turmeric are like the West has studied them. So I'll give some Western terms: antimicrobial, antibacterial, antiviral. And then in Ayurveda terms, they have special properties for skin and blood purification. And skin and blood are connected in Ayurvedic medicine. So the idea is that you take this, and so then in turn, what the West is seeing, what that means from the Western perspective, is that it's anti-inflammatory.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah. So, people kind of go, anti-inflammatory, I need more. Again, just a little bit in our food. Even if you were to cook something and put turmeric, it will have a benefit like taking it in your golden milk. The thing about the golden milk or the turmeric milk is the milk becomes the deliverer. Some people say, well, I can't do cow's milk. You don't have to take it in cow's milk. You could do it in rice milk, coconut milk. Those are some good alternatives. If you get too far into the alternative milks, a lot of them have a lot of things added to them. I find that the coconut and the rice tend to be a little less additive heavy, less preservatives, more close to their original, like as if you had homemade a rice milk or homemade a coconut milk. But what's happened now is people are adding all sorts of things. Like I've gone to the store and I've seen these little containers of turmeric milk powder. So you got to be a little bit careful with those. A few other spices added in is how it's done traditionally. So you might see something called long pepper. We'll maybe put a black pepper in. You'll see a ginger, a cinnamon, a few spices added, fine. I've seen some medicinal herbs added in, something called ashwagandha. You want to stay clear of those, because what is ashwagandha? What does it do for your body versus the next person? Spices as food, a little bit easier because we're used to them. We've been exposed to those spices. There's a lot about turmeric with black pepper making turmeric more available. The traditional is more of what's called a long pepper, but that's very hard to find here. The thing about black pepper, it's one of the most heating spices there is. So if you do get a golden milk and they've add black pepper, all of a sudden you might find that when you drink it, you're sweating, you're angry. It's black pepper. People don't realize how heating black pepper is. They're like, it's just black pepper, salt and pepper. We just put salt and pepper and everything. Black pepper is really heating, and it penetrates really deeply. So if you already have a lot of heat, maybe you don't know if you do. Again, this is where, having an outside reference, having an Ayurvedic practitioner is useful. But you might notice, just ask them when you're ordering, what does my golden milk have in it? That would be a step one at the, at the store, or at the coffee shop, just saying, what are the ingredients of the golden milk? And just being conscientious if it has black pepper in it, that it could be very heating. And some people who have a lot of cold hands and feet, that might feel really good. Somebody already have, I was teaching in Minnesota one day with my husband, and it was snowing, and I had all this gear on. and this guy walked in with shorts and a short sleeve shirt and flip flops. There was snow on the ground. This guy should not be taking a turmeric milk. He already has heat. I am bundled head to toe.
Yeah.
You don't know, see what you're wearing. You don't know if you're hot or cold. How many layers do you have? Look around you and see. That person has no clothes on here, and I'm freezing. You have more cold. They have more heat. They will do better with less black pepper and turmeric. You will do better with more. Those are points of reference just in that kind of awareness.
Okay, so food is medicine. Turmeric is scraping.
Yes.
If I have very little experience with this, as I do, what are some other things I would pay attention to be able to identify if turmeric is what my body needs more of or less of?
Yeah, very good. So if you have tendencies for mucus, any congestion, mucus from any orifice, that's it. But some people have a lot of mucus here, but some people have discharge that comes, vaginal discharge, other secretions from the body. There could be just sebaceous glands that tend to secrete. Some people will wake up with eye crust.
Yep.
Yeah, so this is a kind of secretion. Turmeric clears, removes. It has a scraping quality. So we give it a lot for coughs, colds, when there's mucus production. Any kind of inflammation. Some people don't know if they have inflammation. Tests that I do is I'll put my hand on a joint, see if there's heat. If there's heat on your joints, there tends to be more inflammation or inflammation tendencies. Some people have been told they have inflammation. Some people don't know. If you don't know, you can do that test. If you do know, then you can take it. If you tend towards coughs, colds, low immunity, it does have a tendency to protect you from viruses, bacteria from entering. If there's itching, it's a wonderful remedy for any kind of skin itching. Again, other kinds of itching in the body that can be there. Turmeric, very helpful.
But this is all ingesting turmeric as a food.
Yes, all internal ingestion.
So then I've heard that dairy increases mucus. So if I put turmeric in dairy because I have like sinus allergy stuff happening, are they counteracting each other?
Correct.
Okay, so then like a rice milk would definitely be what I want.
Oh, so if you could do a trial. Sorry, I didn't understand the question. You could do something where you test it. So milk is very similar to mucus. It has it's cooling. This is the mucus that tends to have a cooling property. So it has a synergy, right? It's like mucus and milk are very like similar. Mm-hmm. Now we've put turmeric. We're countering the slimy, sticky, cold qualities of milk. We may find that our mucus reduces because we have the turmeric in the milk. Some people would maybe still not do well with the milk and need to trade it out for a coconut or rice. So step one, you try it with a regular milk and the turmeric, see if it reduces. And step two, if there's still mucus, you could go to a rice or coconut milk with the turmeric.
So I could do this today. I could go to the coffee shop to work later, try a golden latte and see how I feel.
Yep.
And go like tomorrow or the next day and try it with a different type of milk and see how I feel. It's not like I have to do it every day for a week or anything. It's just awesome.
No.
That's so cool.
I know. Usually with mucus production, it's pretty quick. The next morning you'll wake up, you'll find there's just a little more thickness. You'll have more congestion. It comes pretty easily. Sometimes if you want another indicator, you can look at your tongue. The idea is that the tongue is a reflection of the body. And so if there's a thick white coating after you've had the milk, you may not digest the milk that well. So you had the latte one morning, the next morning when you wake up, doing the tongue test, looking at your tongue and seeing if there's a thick white coating. And usually if there's also some mucus, and that usually tends to mean that we may not do that well with milk, cow's milk.
This is so fascinating.
Yes.
Interesting.
So
all right.
3 years ago, when you went in and you ordered it and you thought you were being trendy, you were probably doing something quite good.
Yeah, especially because it was September in Chicago and my allergies were going nuts. That's probably why I felt better afterwards.
Yes. And so a lot of people, not everyone, because everyone's an individual, who have allergic tendencies because they have inflammation and they have mucus, tend to do very well with turmeric in their diet, or in a latte situation, in a turmeric milk situation, because it's scraping and it's anti-inflammatory, and that tends to be what the body's doing with allergies. It's an allergic response. So they tend to do really well, and it cleans the blood, which cleans the blood of impurities, so that whatever comes in, the reaction is less.
That's very cool.
I know.
I think I might have to go to my favorite coffee shop later today, to Sanctum here in Orlando, and get a golden milk turmeric latte.
Yay!
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for asking.
So if I wanted to know more about Ayurveda, which I do, yes. I mean, obviously the best thing you can do is get a one-on-one practitioner and have somebody work with you as an individual. But there's like a million personality tests and things you can take on the internet. Where do you recommend somebody starts if they want to learn more about Ayurveda?
Well, you can take a class with me. I teach classes because basically what's out there right now, you know, what I have found when I've gone to teach is people say, what you're teaching, people aren't teaching. So there's been a bit of a request, you know, just a charge for me to feel like I need to actually educate. So I teach online. I teach smaller, shorter classes, 6 to 8 weeks, and then I teach 8-month classes. I'm starting an 8-month class on January 9th called Embodying Ayurveda, which you learn how to live Ayurveda in an everyday way. You have to be a little careful of the quizzes, because a lot of times people will take these, there's what we call a dosha quiz, and people will take the quiz and then they'll be like, this is what I am. And they'll see it almost like a personality test, and it really is not a personality test. It's really talking about your tendencies of functioning. So I have created those quizzes to meet my needs. I've sort of based them off of what I've seen, and based off that there's a textual reference that I use. I do like, just generally, I like Āyurveda.com, interesting name. One of my teachers, Dr. Latte, has a nice basic site that talks about what is Ayurveda, has some nice recipes and links. Banyan Botanicals sells products, but they have some wonderful, sorry, Chase, my husband just reminded me of something I want to mention. They have wonderful articles that talk about Ayurveda. So those are some interesting, and now I'm starting to write articles with one of our writers for Yoga Well. So we're going to start to put some articles out. One thing that Chase was just mentioning is that when you take a quiz, a lot of times people are asking, there's a difference between your true nature and your current state. So the idea that we were all born with our tendencies of functioning. Some of us run cold, some of us run hot, but in this moment, we may or may not be in our true nature setting. You know, here's our traditional setting, and now based on stress, life, time of life, season, we're out of balance or out of sync, and we need to see where we are in our current state. So a lot of the falsities or the, you know, misnomers that are out there, people are taking a quiz and they're running around, this is my true nature. It doesn't really matter what your true nature is if in your current state you're out of balance. And so, for example, I tended to have a lot of oily skin, you know, not dry tendencies in my life. So that's a tendency of a certain functioning. And then I went through a period where I had more dry skin. That was very small amount of time in my life. So there was a long-term trajectory of having more oily skin, oily hair, and then I went into a dry skin period, which means my current state had changed. So what do I have to do? It depends on where I am currently versus what my long-term tendencies are. Totally. So that's what's happening with people, is that they're doing these quizzes and they're running around like, this is my tendency, but it's like, well, it was, is it still?
Right. Because is that your true nature or where you were at when you took the quiz?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, so, I just bought a house and had like a major life change, and it's funny you say that, my face is all itchy. Yeah. That's never been a problem before, but it's because I'm in an altered state. I'm you know, I have different things going on. There's a lot of upheaval in my life, so it makes sense that I would be a little bit different right now.
Exactly.
So if I took a test right now about Ayurveda, I would get a result and maybe start making choices based on that, and it's not actually a long-term thing, which is why I need a practitioner to work
Yeah.
with and to educate myself.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool beans.
Cool beans. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.